Chances are you've seen the headline that the Nintendo Switch 2 has been selling like crazy, coming out the gate with the greatest console launch of all time. That's great and all, but in order for the Switch 2 to continue this success, it needs one thing and one thing only: good games. Nintendo consoles live and die by the Nintendo exclusive games that they release on them, and the Switch 1 was able to get by with a lot of great exclusive games and a lot of great Wii U ports that were basically exclusives because no one played them. But now for the Switch 2, we don't have nearly as many Wii U ports, and the games are more expensive. So it's incredibly important, at least for this first year, that Nintendo comes out of the gate swinging with some bangers. That is why today I want to talk about the most important Nintendo game of the year. You already read the title and saw the thumbnail. That game is Donkey Kong Bananza. Yes, that's right. I think a Donkey Kong game, you know, a series that's frankly fighting to be a top 5 Nintendo franchise at this point, will go down as the most important game of 2025 for Nintendo. And beyond that, I think the reception to this game, including its critical and sales numbers, are going to be a very important indicator to see just how successful the Switch 2 will be, not just at launch, but throughout its entire first year. Hey guys, it's Thomas from the Switch Stop, and this is why Donkey Kong Bananza is Nintendo's most important game of the Switch 2 so far. First things first, I feel like a lot of people are probably finding this statement to be very shocking because Donkey Kong has not been the most relevant Nintendo franchise in the last 40 years. Not even close. In particular, the Donkey Kong Country series hasn't even seen a new entry in over a decade. We haven't gotten a new Donkey Kong game since before Mario Kart 8. Speaking of Mario Kart, we just got Mario Kart World, and Mario Kart has always been one of Nintendo's best-selling franchises, and currently, well, it is Nintendo's best-selling franchise. There's a reason Mario Kart was the game they chose to bundle with the Switch 2 at launch. Mario Kart sells consoles and consoles sell Mario Kart. That fact might be the biggest symbiotic relationship in gaming. However, because of that, Mario Kart World is not a risk. Sure, you could argue it's a risk within the Mario Kart franchise because it is such a big shakeup, but in terms of sales numbers, this could have been Mario Kart World, the traditional Mario Kart 9. It doesn't matter. Especially with this thing being bundled in with the console, it's going to sell incredibly well regardless of what Nintendo did. That, however, is not the case for Donkey Kong Bananza. Bananza seems to be taking the big 3D platformer role this year, in the same way that when 2017 came around and the Switch launched, Mario Odyssey was the big 3D platformer of that year. However, there are a couple of key differences between Bananza and Odyssey, namely that Odyssey is a Mario game and Donkey Kong Bananza is, well, not that. It's a Donkey Kong game. This should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Mario games sell far better than Donkey Kong games, like to a ridiculous degree. However, Nintendo is clearly positioning Donkey Kong Bananza as one of the biggest Switch 2 games this year, especially with it being the final last big thing in the Switch 2 Direct back in April. I mean, that's an honor they tend to only bestow onto their biggest announcements, especially in what could have gone down as probably their biggest presentation maybe ever. The Switch 2 Direct was massive and super important for the console, and they ended it all with Donkey Kong. Now, for me personally, I could not be more excited about Bananza. I was extremely excited back in April, and that Direct only made me more hype. I've seen a lot of similar sentiment around too. We've gotten a lot of comments recently, especially on my video talking about why Bananza is going to be so great, of people saying like, oh, I was kind of excited for this game, but that Direct sold me. Now I'm completely 100% getting this title. However, if we take a zoom out and look at the more casual sphere, I'm a little bit concerned. Like, Donkey Kong Bananza looks like it was almost specifically made for me. I absolutely love 3D platformers. Obviously, I love 3D Mario games, but any 3D platformer made by Nintendo is a game I will play. And on top of that, I'm a huge fan of Donkey Kong. Specifically, comparing like 2D Donkey Kong to 2D Mario, I honestly prefer the Donkey Kong Country games there. In my opinion, the levels are more fun, the higher challenge of those games lends more replayability, and they just tend to have more depth, as Donkey Kong has a more in-depth moveset, and at least in Tropical Freeze, the different Kongs you play control completely differently, whereas in a 2D Mario game, all the characters more and less play the exact same. Because of that, I'm super excited for this game. However, it is facing more of an uphill battle compared to something like Mario Odyssey, simply because it does not have Mario in the title or on the box art. I mean, this game looks incredible, especially after seeing that most recent Direct. This game is weird as hell, but in a good way. There is so much personality, so much charm, and even the movement just looks fun. Like, every time I see gameplay of Bananza, I just want to be playing it. However, because of all the reasons I just mentioned, Bananza is far more of a question mark than something like Mario Odyssey was when it launched. Of course, Mario Odyssey was going to sell well. Bananza will sell well, but will it be as successful as something like Mario Odyssey? That's where the question mark is, and that's why this is Nintendo's most important game for the Switch 2 Year 1 lineup. Because I don't want to say Nintendo's putting all their eggs in one basket, but they do have a lot riding on this game, and they want it to be really successful as a result. First things first, this game is huge. This is the second ever $70 game from Nintendo, with the first one being Tears of the Kingdom, so if they're putting it up on that level, you already know they're really expecting this game to have high critical praise. Things like voice acting and vocals in a Donkey Kong platformer game is not something Nintendo just casually drops. I mean, the maps are huge. There's tons of collectibles in the spirit of Donkey Kong 64. It's an open world where you can destroy and build in the world. Even stuff like the costumes. You can upgrade all the costumes in this game. They're packing a lot into this title with the hopes of it being the Switch 2's Mario Odyssey, the second big boost in its launch year, the same way Odyssey was to a Breath of the Wild. Speaking of Odyssey, this game seems deeply tied to that, with the same team almost definitely working on it, and also bringing Pauline back and having her sing. There's also a theory that they essentially build New Donk City at the end of the game. You can even see these crates with NDC on them. Stuff like the UI, the music, the movement, the art style, the fact that it's open world. Even the music players look the same. The co-op is virtually the same. It's extremely clear that this is developed by the Odyssey team, but that just adds another wrinkle into how successful this game needs to be. Not only is it taking up the 3D Mario slot for the first year, but this was also likely taking the developers of 3D Mario, meaning the next 3D Mario game, while it's definitely being worked on, hasn't been this team's sole priority for the past however many years. Realistically, we're not getting a new 3D Mario title for a decent bit, meaning even more is relying on a 3D Donkey Kong game, which again, naturally won't be as appealing to certain people. However, even though Mario's not on the box, Donkey Kong Bananza is still a landmark title for the Switch 2 that will indicate how successful this console will be going forward. The biggest reason the original Nintendo Switch was so successful for Nintendo was obviously because the console sold very well, but more importantly, the console had a ridiculously high attach rate, meaning that everyone who bought the console was actually buying the games. The Wii and the Switch sold about the same. The Switch actually outsold the Wii, but let's just assume they sold the same amount of units for the sake of argument. People who bought the Switch bought way more games on the Switch than people who bought the Wii. There were so many people who bought the Wii and probably had like 3 games, like Wii Sports, Mario Kart Wii, and maybe like a Wii Fit type thing. The Switch was selling incredibly well, but the games were also selling ridiculous. There was a period of time where more people had bought Breath of the Wild than Nintendo Switch consoles. Even franchises that typically did not sell as well got a massive boost on the Switch because everyone who had a Switch wanted to buy Switch games, which again, it sounds kind of crazy, but that's not that common for consoles. A lot of people buy them and then forget about them and don't buy all the games that release. That was not the case with Switch though, as a lot of Nintendo's smaller series ended up selling better than they ever had on Nintendo's hybrid console. If you pair that with the fact that Donkey Kong Bananza is the first big game release for the Switch 2 post-launch, I genuinely believe how well this game sells will be a great indicator of how well other games will sell on the Switch 2 for the rest of its life. We know Donkey Kong is huge, he's very recognizable, but Donkey Kong specific games, again, have never been like super big tentpole titles, at least recently in the same way that a Mario, a Zelda, or even an Animal Crossing game has been. That's mainly because we just haven't gotten a lot of Donkey Kong games recently. Again, it's been since Tropical Freeze on the Wii U, but the point still stands. In modern day Nintendo, especially since the Switch, a Donkey Kong game is kind of an unsure bet, which to me is why it's crazy they're placing so many eggs in this basket rather than just, instead of doing Donkey Kong Bananza, making it like, I don't know, Mario Bananza. Obviously, it wouldn't be that straightforward, but doing a 3D Mario here is much more of a safe, surefire bet. If Donkey Kong Bananza sells well, it bodes well for every other Switch 2 game coming, because it proves that a game doesn't have to be one of Nintendo's like top big 3 franchises to help carry a console, because that's what this game is going to do. If it sells well, this game will be looked back at as one of Nintendo's biggest games for the Switch 2's launch year, but really, it's kind of the first big question mark in terms of sales for Nintendo on Switch 2, because again, Mario Kart World is not a question mark, that's an exclamation mark. That game is going to sell well regardless. In my opinion, when it's all said and done, Donkey Kong Bananza probably will not sell as many units as like a Mario Odyssey. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually starts out as more successful, given that there are so many people who just got a Switch 2. However, both how this game launches and how it continues to sell throughout the rest of the year, in my opinion, will be the biggest predictor as to how successful the Switch 2 will be. Again, not just in terms of how many consoles this game will sell, because there will be people who pick up a Switch 2 for this game specifically, but more importantly for Nintendo's bottom line, how successful this console is at selling games. When Mario Odyssey released on Switch, even if you weren't a huge Mario fan, you were likely getting that title. Almost everyone bought that game and it sold incredibly well as a result. Despite not featuring Mario, who is a far more popular character, Donkey Kong Bananza is being put up to the same task. It's occupying pretty much the exact same space in the Switch 2's launch year as Odyssey, so I'm genuinely so interested to see if it's able to sell that well, given that as far as we know, this will be the most successful Switch 2 game within its first year, not counting Mario Kart World, but again, that was like bundled in with a lot of consoles and it's just Mario Kart. I am super interested to see how well this sells, because again, I am over the moon excited for this game, and I know a lot of you guys are as well, but I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're also just a big Nintendo fan like myself. What's more important is how this game will do with the more casual scene. It looks like a true evolution of Mario Odyssey in the sense of, okay, this is now a more in-depth 3D platformer with Donkey Kong mechanics. There's more customization, there's skill points, more open levels, a more in-depth moveset, and even from what we can see, a better and more prevalent story throughout the game. This game may not be the new 3D Mario, but from everything we've seen, it has the amount of attention to detail, passion, and effort that any 3D Mario game would, on top of, again, having the exact same developers most likely. If this game can manage to sell as well as 3D Mario games do, or at least capture most of that hype, that bodes extremely well for the Switch 2 going forward, which is very important. The better this game does, the more likely Nintendo is to take some chances throughout the Switch 2's lifespan. Because again, I know this isn't like an F-Zero game, it's Donkey Kong. It will sell well, but considering they're putting as much effort into this as a new 3D Mario, even giving it the same team, this is still a big risk for Nintendo. The Switch 2 is still unproven in the console space in terms of software sales, and Donkey Kong Bananza is gonna be the game to smash through and let Nintendo and the rest of the gaming community know just how big the Switch 2 is. I'm incredibly excited for this title. Again, everything looks so cool. It looks like the game is like perfectly made for me. I couldn't have asked for anything more from a new game. 3D Donkey Kong platformer collectathon made by the 3D Mario team. It's a dream come true. Sign me up. I'm just extremely interested to see though how many other people, especially outside of like the core Nintendo fan base, are looking at this game with the same rose-tinted glasses as myself. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below though. Do you think this game will be as successful as a Mario Odyssey, or will it be as close? Or do you think just because it's Donkey Kong, it's gonna be a little bit underwhelming in terms of how many sales it has? Let me know down in the comment section below, and let me know how excited you are for Bananza as well. With that out of the way, that's why Donkey Kong Bananza is the most important Switch 2 game of the year. I'm Thomas from the Switched Up, and I hope you enjoyed. Click the video on screen right now though to see 10 reasons as to why I genuinely believe Donkey Kong Bananza might be the best game ever. Like bro, I'm so stoked for this game, and I have all those reasons in the video on screen right now.